play Captain Xavier here and in loads of other places. And today's story comes from the first place that I played Captain Xavier, the Empire of Adria, where I first created the character of Captain Xavier de Normandie. And this was from the first year that I was in Adria, so I was still a newbie. Oh Lord, how young and foolish I was. But the story is of how Captain Xavier very nearly took the entire Imperial Estates hostage. And to be entirely honest, I don't think I was actually Captain Xavier yet. I don't think I'd been knighted at this point. I took the title of captain when I took my first knighthood because I was then an officer and sir, and I was kind of going by the title of captain, but it wasn't official. I was officially given that title when I was knighted. But we were still a fairly young organization within the Empire of Adria, the chapter that I was in, which was in Moscow, Idaho, called Futuna back then. I think we eventually changed the name to Caerleon and then later changed it to Alhambra, but at the time we were still Futuna. And somehow the local viceroys, the local leaders, managed to get the Imperial Estates held in our subdivision. Now, the Imperial Estates are the equivalent of Congress, basically. It's everybody who holds a vote at the imperial level, which are kings and queens and dukes and duchesses and the emperor, as well as knights of a certain level or above. There are actually 3 levels of knight, and third level knights have a vote on the Imperial Estates all by themselves. And you have to have been in the organization for at least a bare minimum of, I believe, 6 years. And that's if you participated at an event every single month and never missed any of the requirements necessary to attain a third level knighthood. It would take you a minimum of 6 years. So you had to have been in the organization and been very, very active in the organization for a long time to get your own vote. Certain sizes of household members also got an imperial vote. I believe marquise, once you were a march, which was 2 baronies, which are, I think, 3 households. So you had to have at least 30? You had to have at least, I think, 30 people minimum organized into estates below you, and then you got a vote on the Imperial Estates, I think. On a local level, it was less stringent requirements. I think second level knights get a vote on the local estates, and lords of households and barons as well. But once a year, or maybe twice a year, every once in a while, every so often, all of these fancy people get together somewhere. They all travel to a location, and they hold the estates. They vote on new rules, they deal with arbitrations, and all sorts of general stuff. Mostly it's rules, affecting the national rules of the organization. And apparently they are incredibly boring, and incredibly dry, and incredibly long, and it's people sitting around in stuffy, fancy Elizabethan garb and whatnot, bickering over rules for hours at a time. And then at the very end, when it's all over, then they have a feast and a big fancy court, and accolades are given and awards and all of that jazz. And somehow this got held in our tiny little subdivision up in Moscow, Idaho. At the time, it was a very small subdivision. I was brand new to the organization. I had no idea what the estates were, had no idea who these fancy people were, had no concept that I should be, behaving myself, because I was a pirate. I was Captain Xavier, and I was a schmuck, and I was a newbie, and I went to this because it was, in the town that I lived in, but I had no idea what was going on. I wasn't allowed into the actual estate's meeting because I had no rank at that point, and there were a bunch of us sitting around outside who were all fairly new to the organization going, what on earth are these people doing? What is all of this? This was long before the crew was created. Years before the crew ended up getting created, actually. Sergeant Kyle was there. He wasn't a sergeant yet. He was still very much he'd been in the organization only a little bit longer than I had. And he was on guard duty, so he got to stand outside the door to the estates meeting, armed, and just stand there for hours while these bigwigs bickered. And in the meantime, we're out in the hallway, hooting and hollering and having a good time. And we decided, wouldn't it be funny if the pirate took the estates hostage? The whole Imperial Estates, all the kings and queens, the emperor himself, take them hostage and demand ridiculous ransom. And where this was being held was at a university conference center. And there was only one entrance into where the conference rooms were, and there was a large gate that could be closed. There were probably emergency exits, obviously, but there was a large gate that could be closed. And so we were going to close the gate and, put chain on it, or I think we were just going to wrap it in duct tape, or make chain out of duct tape, probably something we came up with, and then send in a black spot and a list of demands, which included things like 2 liters of root beer, and 2 boxes of macaroni and cheese, and some string cheese, and a rubber chicken. All of which could be acquired at the Winco, the grocery store that was right across the street. So we were going to see if they would actually put together a collection, because I think we worked it out, and it was less than $5 worth of stuff we were demanding. And surely all of these people who, had the money to travel and were kings and queens and fancy lawyers from California and whatnot could scrape together $5 to meet the demands of the silly pirate. And we had it all set up, and we were gonna do it, and then our local viceroy talked us out of it because he was convinced that these people, these are very serious people, and they won't think this is funny, and they will have you up on charges, and blah 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 blah. And so he talked us out of it, and we were very disappointed. But I vowed that if I ever got the opportunity to do so again, I would. I would not let this opportunity slip by twice. And years later, I ended up Duke, and then later Archduke when we grew large enough. And so I ended up having a chat with the Empress at the time, who had been one of the queens that had been at the Estates. And so she actually didn't remember me at first, but then I told her what I had been wearing, and she suddenly remembered me. I was like, wait, you're in charge now? I was like, that's what I keep saying. I don't know how this happened, because I had been given a gift. I was a pirate, and somebody decided it would be appropriate for the pirate to have a pet. And the normal pet of pirates would, of course, be a parrot. And somebody did actually give me a toy parrot that would repeat whatever you said at it. But my character's backstory was that he had nearly died during the Black Death, the Black Plague. He actually contracted Black Plague, but survived it because his family threw him out into the snow, and the hypothermia killed the plague, but didn't kill him. He managed to survive it, and then his whole family got wiped out by the plague. And so he ended up, having to flee because cursed and evil and devil and whatnot else, and joined the army because they'll take anybody. And has the advantage of, since he survived the plague, he now has the antibodies and is now immune to plague. But plague was carried by rats, and so somebody gave me a rat. A large plastic rat. And so, being the snarky fellow that I am, being a pirate who, pirates always have a parrot on their shoulder, I wore the rat on my shoulder at the Imperial Estates meeting. I had it duct taped to my sword baldric. And so all of these kings and queens and emperors and dukes and duchesses are marching past, and there's this pirate with a rat on his shoulder, just being ridiculous and menacing and whatnot. I was 18, I didn't know what was going on. And, never did name the rat. But later, we eventually, it had a hole that had been cut in the bottom of it, and that has now, unfortunately, become somewhat damaged. But I realized that I could, in fact, put it on a flagpole, and this became the standard on the top of the crew's flag, because we were piratically based. And the streamers that are on here all represent a different war. And I used to know what they all were, and I don't anymore. I couldn't tell you what half of these streamers mean anymore. I believe gold ones were Crown Wars, silver ones I think were Holy Wars. These red, green, and gold ones were Harvest Wars. I assume these big gold ones were Imperial Crown Wars. Black ones were probably Banner Wars. Some of them I have no idea. There's a couple of blue ones in here. Not a clue. There's one white one. No idea. This red one, nothing. Green one, no idea. Yeah, I know we ended up not getting all of them. There should be at least twice as many as this. And we had to augment them, and I believe each ring represented 1 year is how that worked. And eventually we ran out of room, and we're going to have to start adding more, but then we kind of stepped away from the Empire of Adria for many, many years, but that was the crew's war banner. Yeah. So yeah, she was somewhat baffled that the guy with the rat on his shoulder was now the Archduke and was the, was in charge, and I told her. It was an accident. I didn't mean to. It was somebody else's turn. This was before... Well, no, this I think might have been after the first border war, which is probably why she was talking to me, because the first border war was all well and good. The second border war was where things got a little interesting, and Captain Xavier really got a reputation at the Imperial level without really expecting it, and then things got really interesting after that. So that was how he nearly took the Imperial Estates hostage, and remember, I swore, that if I ever got the opportunity again, that I wouldn't let it slip. So that is going to be the first option for the next story, is the story of the second time I got the opportunity to take an Imperial hostage. And what happened there? We did, in fact, take the Emperor hostage. So, first option, when Captain Xavier and the crew took the Emperor hostage. The second option will be the first border war, because I don't think I've told that story, which would then segue into the second border war, which is where Captain Xavier really got his reputation. For the third option, we're going to deviate violently from my usual style of stories and go into one that's actually Lego-based. While I was in college, I got to take a Lego robotics course. And there were competition involved, and my Sergeant Kyle, also took the class with me. And so the third story is going to be how we absolutely mercilessly crushed the competition in the Lego robotics class. So there will be a survey down below where you can pick which one of these stories you want to hear next. These are all really good ones, so they will probably keep popping up until all of them get told, because I want to tell them. So there you have it. Hope this one was fun. It's more how it leads into future stories that really makes this one interesting. So this was kind of the birth of the vicious Captain Xavier, or how he kind of ended up on the path that he ended up on. So there we have it. Go ahead and vote. Hope you enjoyed this. Thank you for watching. A quick bonus story. After the feast at the Imperial Estates meeting, people were just socializing and hanging out and hobnobbing, and me, being a complete, newbie and schmuck, didn't really feel like interacting with kings and queens and whatnot, since I had no title whatsoever. But I did enjoy playing many of the games, and chess was one of the games that was being played, and there may have actually been a tournament involved, though I don't think I entered if there was. And I played 2 games that night, and won 2 games that night. One was not terribly remarkable. I don't remember who I was playing, but he was, I think, a king from somewhere. But that was a fairly unremarkable game. It was a close game, it was fun. But then the second game I ended up playing against Sir Mikos, who was, I believe, well known for being a fairly good chess player. And I believe he had already defeated several kings that night. And so when I sat down with him, I fully expected to get absolutely trounced. And so I played a little bit squirrely, which can be a lot of fun when you throw caution to the wind. And it ended up being the most remarkable game of chess I've ever played, because I ended up checkmating him without taking a single one of his pieces and only losing a bishop, using a knight, my queen, and the bishop in one corner of the board. We went around, and I was just goofing off, honestly. But he was convinced that it was some deep strategy and that I was up to something, and I wasn't at first. And then the move just appeared. It's like, if I sacrifice my bishop, he has to take it, and I will checkmate him with a knight and a queen without having taken a single one of his pieces. And I pulled it off, and he was absolutely flummoxed, and he never played chess against me again. Which was a shame, because I really enjoyed playing chess with Sir Mikos. Sir Mikos is one of the finest men I have ever known, and I'm genuinely honored to call him a friend, and I wish I got to see him more often. It's been a while since I got to see him, so if you see this, Mikos, know that I remember that chess game, and there was no deep strategy. It was just pretty much luck. Till next time!